what we tend to not understand is that time really doesn't exist. Clocks exist. Time doesn't exist.
Right.
And like you said, we've been given this functional arrow of time, which puts us in one specific direction so that we can organize our thoughts and our days and our years and weeks and what we're going to do and where we're going to meet up with somebody and everything else. So we have this ability to coordinate and collaborate with each other, like how we're here today at this specific time. However, if you understand that time is also an illusion, it's something that you can use as a tool, but if you also understand that it's an illusion, then you can actually master time and you can maximize what you're doing on this planet.
There's a lot of people that's trapped into increments of time that they have to work in, you understand me, from a 9 to 5 position, and they have to live within windows of hours and dissect their days based on that. You understand me? And the unfortunate reality of it is that most people will never have a true understanding of life because they're living on borrowed time. You understand me? And so I'm always working to help present perspective and observation on where people can understand the laws of time a little more. You understand me? Especially as we enter into 4th and 5th dimensional phases here, you understand me, on this planet Earth. You understand me? Or the universe, as we will. You know, human beings, you know, we're very interesting, you know, beings. You understand me? Like, just the idea that we allow someone else to decide what time is for us is a very interesting thing. Right? From Julius Caesar to the Roman Pope with his papal bulls deciding, you know, what is a 365 calendar, what is talking about 7-day weeks and 60 seconds and 60 minutes. And we say, okay, let's go along with it. You know? and we don't realize that it speeds up, you understand me, the process from being born to when you leave this place. You know, and then we already have expectations on what life is going to be because there's other people that tell us what it is, when we're going to die, when we get old, when we're going to feel a certain way. So it sets up a curation for us to die a certain way and at a certain speed. I want to hear what your interpretation of what time is first.
Well, you know, this is a very deep question. I've talked about this so many times in different lectures and workshops, you know, because for people in the third dimension, we're in the third dimension, what we tend to not understand is that time really doesn't exist. Clocks exist. Time doesn't exist.
Right.
And like you said, we've been given this functional arrow of time, which puts us in one specific direction so that we can organize our thoughts and our days and our years and weeks and what we're going to do and where we're going to meet up with somebody and everything else. So we have this ability to coordinate and collaborate with each other, like how we're here today at this specific time. However, if you understand that time is also an illusion, it's something that you can use as a tool, but if you also understand that it's an illusion, then you can actually master time and you can maximize what you're doing on this planet. Because if you go in all the higher dimensions, you know, we're in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and all the way up.
For the layman that don't understand what being in the 3rd dimension means, can you give us a breakdown?
Okay, sure. So if you draw a line on a piece of paper, that's the 1st dimension. If you then connect those lines and create a house on a piece of paper, that's a 2-dimensional structure, or you can move that into a computer. Anything you see in a computer that looks 3D is actually 2D. Right? So, and because we're in the 3rd, we can see down into 2D, we can see all the way down obviously into 1D, and we can manipulate those dimensions from our higher selves. Now, now there are beings in 4th, 5th, and 6th dimensions, there's people above us. Now, because of that, they see us and they recognize the past, present, and future operating all at the same time. Everything's happening at once.
Right.
There is no separation between the past, present, and the future. The arrow doesn't exist. Because they're higher than us, they can look down into the 3rd and they can see into what we're doing. So
who are before? Hey, we got to unpack a little bit. We got to unpack.
Okay.
It's high level, but I want to make sure that the people can follow along with it. So, you know, talking about 3rd dimension, right? You know, it's ants are not 3rd dimensional beings, right? Because they can't see upward, right? They're not horizontal. You understand me? They exist on the plane where they're looking forward, right? So when you're moving about the rest of the world that is higher up to them. They have no access to that, no perspective on that whatsoever. You understand me? For them, everything is straight and in front of them. For human beings, we have the ability to look upward, to look inward, to look outward, to look around, right? So therefore, we're connected into different angles, different perspectives, and different dimensions. You understand me? And then what I wanted to get though with next though, so let's say we got the third dimension, right? Now we're talking about the fourth dimension, right? What is the fourth dimension?
The fourth dimension is something called a tesseract. And if you go into the ancient text, it's Metatron's cube. Meta, M-E-T-A, meta. Obviously, you know,
meta.
The metaverse, right? They got that from Metatron's cube. It's a fourth dimensional substructure. Now, this fourth dimension is really something called a quasi-crystal. And this quasi-crystal in the fourth dimension, it casts a shadow. And the shadow that it casts, it creates the realm that we're living in here. We're living in a shadow of a higher dimension. That shadow creates a third dimension. It actually creates a fractal of it, creates this fractal holographic matrix that we're actually maneuvering in the third dimension right now.
So would the fourth dimension be considered a dimension of time?
You can address a fourth dimension of time like Albert Einstein was saying if you're just looking at a third plus a fourth being the arrow. But when you actually move up into another dimension, we now know in quantum physics that there is actually a fourth dimension. So all dimensions are in 90-degree angles of each other. And according to quantum theory right now, we're really anticipating that there's at least 11 dimensions, or otherwise the universe would collapse. So there really is truly a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, all the way up. Not just the arrow of time. That's just something extra. They try to make it make sense back then by saying the fourth dimension is time, but time is actually not a dimension at all.
So now that's a very interesting, because it's a lot that I'm sure that everybody's like, all right, I thought I was smart, and then I tried to keep up, and then I got left behind.
Right.
You understand me? And what I want to bring people up to speed. You understand me? And the ideas in correlation to the analogy of how we're moving as a collective human species, specifically with technology, right?
Yeah.
Because I think it can be connected to, cellular technology, right? Going from 3G to 4G. And, going from 3G to 4G to 5G, which allows us to be able to do different things that we normally weren't able to do that weren't possible, right? Let's say you got 3G phones, it's helping you make better, faster calls, you understand me, connected. Then you get to 4G and you're talking about now applications and streaming, right? And Wi-Fi, right? Being able to connect within systems and the Internet of Things. And then 5G allowing completely new systems of possibility. And this was where I think a lot of people missed the point in 2020 where everybody was going through the craze of whether 5G was killing them or not. It was more so, what was 5G going to do? Right? So the NFTs and the Web3, right? And you're talking about, AR, VR, spatial reality, all these different things are not possible unless you have 5G being in connection. So it was representing a new world being produced outward. And it wasn't just an accident that NFTs came after the pandemic and this technology came after. There was something happening at that same point in time that for me, it was entering into a new phase of the world, a new dimension, a new speed, right? And that speed, can be known as time, if you will. And a lot of people, without that ability to process at a high level, right? Like you got bandwidth, you got landline speed, you got Wi-Fi speed, you got 5G speed, you get left behind. So everything seems that it's moving fast, but that's only because you're not moving as fast.
Right.
Everything stands still when you're moving at the same speed. You understand me? And so what I've always tried to do is keep people up to speed where we at in the dimension that we're currently in, or a little bit above, so you can be ahead of your time as a visionary. Because the fastest speed is the mind. You understand me? Being able to travel in your thought. Right? That can take you into time, that can take you ahead of time, if you will. But the ideas of time itself, I love the concept that it being an illusion, because even the era with time is connected to language, right? That I wrote in my book about how when we speak in the English language, it's a very future tense reference, right? So we're always referencing the future as we speak. I will be there, I'm going to do this. And we have so many different phrases within the language, we're always pushing ourselves, not connecting to the present,
Yeah.
but at a later point in day and time.
Right.
You understand me? And I think that learning to be present connects us to the power that we have in control over.
Yeah.
And then once you have that power, then you know how to create seeds that can control the rest of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But you said something about beings,
Yeah.
right? Now, we always look at ourselves as people, but then when we talk about people, you're talking about human beings, right? The being part is not something that the average person understands.
Yeah.
Right? And then when you're saying that there are other beings, who are these other beings?
I believe personally, just based off of my research, and I've gone through now over 1,000 scriptures, texts, papyruses, cuneiform tablets from all over the world. They all have a very similar story.
Mm-hmm.
And all these ancient civilizations talk about beings, not just beings who came here from other planets, people that look like us and we look like them. We're, in other words, not identical, but very similar. In other words, a bilateral, bipedal hominid of some type that can maneuver around, that has appendages that can manipulate the environment, because without that, you can't move out into space and other places. And they also talk about multidimensional. You get into like the non-M.I.T and stuff like that, talking about multidimensional beings. And so in physics, in quantum physics in particular, they started theorizing on these dimensions and were able to even analyze and discover some that they actually do exist. And on top of that, they realized that the dimensions are packed so tight on top of one another that if you can phase shift your atomic structure, your subatomic frequency, you can walk right into another dimension. And so they started postulating, what if beings from higher dimensions or some of these apparitions and these paranormal phenomena that we're seeing, are they able to maybe take a glimpse or a peek? Are they phasing through into our universe? And so from higher dimensions. And so they started really theorizing it. It seems to be, and based on my research, that there's people living everywhere. Not just, and I'm not talking about little green men with antenna. I think that there's people living all throughout this universe in the third dimension. And I think there's people living all throughout even higher multiple dimensions, maybe at a certain level, a certain height in those dimensions. Maybe they don't have a real corporeal body.
Right, non-physical.
Non-physical, you know what I'm saying? But I believe that the consciousness is there.
Then that part is interesting, the non-physical aspect, because I understand that and I can believe in that idea and that concept. It's like what people think, I think of angels as angles.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Because, you know, angels are supposed to exist in between dimensions.
Yeah.
You understand me? And angles, you understand me, are dimensions.
That's
right? And so it's like perspective is your angle in which you see things and view things. And oftentimes angels come and gives us new perspective, new thoughts. You understand me?
Yeah.
Arriving from a different, completely dimension of thought that we couldn't arrive at ourselves.
Correct.
You know, but at the same time, when you're talking about non-corporeal bodies or non-physical bodies, you understand me? I like that concept because when you're talking about time, you're talking about light, you're talking about all of these different ways in which light or energy can exist within, and consciousness, right? The awareness of, you know, output, you understand, mathematical output, right? Do you believe that the universe is mathematical?
Oh, absolutely. The language of God is mathematics, because mathematics can literally explain everything that we experience and everything also that exists. Even the fact that we're existing in a light matrix can be proven through mathematics. So we're living in a matrix that's basically written on mathematics called Adinkra codes. And these Adinkra codes go all the way back to the Dogons, Dogon tribes out of Mali, Africa. They actually originated these codes, and they were given these codes by the Nomo, and they learned them. They drew them out as art forms. But now, and they put them on clothing and blankets and everything else.
So the Dogon tribe, very interesting tribe, you know, that was able to discover, you know, systems before telescopes and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So how did they arrive to be able to, because I know a lot of people, I posted about this not too long ago, people want to understand how the hell did the Dogon tribe arrive to it, right? I just subscribe to, you know, us being, you know, gods, melanated beings on this planet Earth. We connected in a way that we just don't understand anymore. You understand me? And being multidimensional, I think about physics in that aspect where you're talking about things being entangled. Not Will and Jada entanglements, you understand me? But quantum entanglements.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, once you understand that, being multidimensional to me is easily understood from the fact that you can break us down to atoms. right? And then
Yeah.
cells, and then we get into our skin and we see our physical.
Yeah.
But from an atomic level, those are different laws.
Yeah.
Right? And we're made up of atoms.
Mhm.
So that an aspect of our existence is obeying different laws of the universe.
Yeah.
And then our cells are obeying different laws of
Yeah.
gravity and magnetism, right, and flow. But then we as human beings are obeying different laws, right, of gravity and magnetism in the universe. And then we forget about the universal laws of our multidimensional self because we only know man's law.
Exactly.
You understand me? So I think being multidimensional is easily understood as above, so below. You understand me? But the idea of the Dogon people being able to chart systems, how were they able to figure that out? You understand me? Before the Europeans had an idea of what was out there.
Right. Well, to be honest with you, if you go all the way back to the ancient Dogon history, before they got to Mali, they were in the land of Kem. They were the original inhabitants of the land of Kem before it was called Egypt. And so...
Kem meaning the land of blacks?
The land of blacks, correct. Exactly, land of blacks. Kem was black, it's all black. That's in the tablets.
So Kem, there's so much Jews in here. But so in Kem, you understand me, that's Africa.
Yeah.
Right? Africa. I know everybody calls the Middle East as if...
it's Africa.
It's probably, the Middle East is the most funniest made up concept, magical idea on the planet.
I know.
Because it's like, you have in Africa, but no, this is like the Middle East Africa. It doesn't count for Sub-Saharan Africa, Northern Africa, and East Africa. Like, but it's Africa, right?
It's Africa.
Yeah, so...
I mean,
for those who don't
Cairo
know,
is in Africa.
Cairo's in Africa.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I know, people still get it wrong till this day.
That's crazy.
It surprises me. But so they, according to their records and their handed down verbal history, their records are etched into caves and stuff like that. The Nomo came here from Sirius B. Okay, so there's a trinary star system that we know of called Sirius, the Sirius star system, A, B, and C.
Yeah.
B is a failed star. In other words, it ran out of fuel, turned into a white dwarf. These beings were orbiting on a planet that orbited that star, according to the Dogon, not me. Came here, they're called the Nomo. The Dogon called them the Nomo. Taught them all about the star system, the orbital pattern, our entire solar system, the names, the shapes, the sizes, the colors of all the planets in our solar system, all the planetary alignments. And they even knew that that white dwarf star was so gravitationally heavy that one spoonful couldn't be lifted by over 1 million men. They even knew that. We learned that in quantum mechanics and quantum physics in the 1970s, 1980s. We hypothesized it. And obviously we couldn't even see that star until the 1980s, 1970s, I'm sorry.
So when did they record it?
Thousands of years ago.
Thousands of years ago.
It's like, we're talking about over 6,000 to 7,000 years. They've had depictions of them and everything else, and they taught them how to make these Dogon masks, but they also gave them the Adinkra codes. Now these Adinkra codes look like designs on clothing and patterns. When you turn these designs into three-dimensional structures, they become something called error-correcting codes. And Professor James S. Gates, a black professor who used to be the science advisor for Obama when he was in office. He's now the professor, I believe, at the University of Maryland in supersymmetry and theoretical physics. He discovered these Adinkra codes. He rediscovered them, obviously, and he turned them into three-dimensional objects. And then from there, he found the error-correcting codes. He was analyzing and accessing information about the ether of space-time, and he discovered that the entire ether, in other words, everything this soup that we're operating in throughout the entire universe, is running on a specific code. It's called an Adinkra code. It's called error-correcting codes. The same exact kind of codes that run search engines and web browsers. That's what's running the universe.
So listen now. At certain points in time in the interview, the glasses got to come on. This was one of those points in time when we're talking about Adinkra codes and going into multidimensional aspects of thinking. Being connected to the stars, you understand me, and being connected to the universe is a very interesting aspect of thinking. I grew up, in the Nation of Islam.
Okay.
And in the Nation of Islam, there is a lot of, astronomical teachings, about astronomy and sizes of the planets and distance. That was one of the first things we had to learn.
Wow.
Right, where the distance between the planets, the speed of light, the speed of sound, right?
Wow.
The total square mileage of the water, earth, land, mountains, rivers, lakes, right? everything. So, you know, deep into the teachings of Elijah Muhammad is astronomy, right? He wasn't really into astrology because he said it was too much guesswork. But astronomy he was into because it was mathematical. And you're talking about, you know, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, for a black man to be teaching astronomy, especially the poor black people in America. It was it was
light years ahead of time.
It was an interesting indication of, you know, where he got his knowledge. Because he had a 3rd grade education, but he was teaching about astronomy. Right? And he would dare the scholars of the world to prove him wrong. Of course, none of them did, right? Because he was talking about Pluto back in those days before they would recognize Pluto, right? And I used to always think about why. And one of the last books that he wrote was called The Theology of Time. And The Theology of Time it's not a book for the beginner, initiate. You understand me? It's definitely more novice when you get into your understanding. And then that's when he proposed and he talked about alien life on Mars. Right? He talked about the different planets who can and who can't go there, what they were doing and building. Like, he has very detailed composition of thought on extraterrestrial life. You understand me? And the origins of the planet itself and the universe itself. You know, and it's very interesting because we often believe that our connection to, you know, the way that the Dogons were able to chart the stars is lost. Right? You know, but that knowledge has always been within our DNA and always been passed down within us. There's just certain keepers of that knowledge, right? And those keepers of the knowledge are not often listened to because, especially today, we in a very static, distracted, low-level way of thinking. So it's like, you have to think about the mind, and it's not even to say that they were the most intelligent people on the planet, but connected, you understand me, as being different. Like, that's a different type of intelligence. Because we only measure academia or scholarship intelligence that you get from universities, but we don't measure the intelligence you get from the universe. You understand me? I want to talk about, you know, I don't want to leave time in the star system just yet, but I do want to talk about your relationship with astronomy and whether you believe astrology to be a true science or not.
Well, I'm actually an amateur astronomer.
Okay.
I've been doing that for a long time.
Yes, sir.
I have a real nice telescope. I have a Celestron SLR, and it's a real nice telescope. You can actually see the rings of Saturn. You can see Jupiter. You can see Mars. I took a famous picture that's been circulating for years of Mars during the summer. When you take a picture of Mars during the summer, it actually has green, it has blues. It's not a red planet. You can see that the ice caps are smaller, which means they've melted. There's a lot of liquid water on the planet. And a lot of those greens, I believe, is vegetation. You know, and now all the science data is coming back out from NASA. Now, all of a sudden, press releases are coming out. The soil on Mars is better for growing crops than on Earth. Now they're saying there's billions of tons of liquid water on Mars now. You know what I'm saying?
I can believe that.
And they're also talking about the fact that there's an atmosphere that is the equivalent to being like 18,000 feet above sea level, but that's like going to Peru. I'm going to Peru in a few weeks, right? So same thing. You got to acclimate to that height, to that low oxygen, but you can still breathe as long as you stay close to the ground. Once you go higher up, it's going to be very dangerous. But if you're within like 10 feet of the ground, you can actually breathe. You just need to acclimate. So all of a sudden, all this is coming out because why? They're getting ready to, you know, to build an infrastructure up there, in my opinion, and do a breakaway civilization. That's what the whole Elon Musk and all that's on Mars is all about. So I got really into it. Now, one of the reasons why I built the underground shelter that you mentioned, called Fort Terra Nova, that was back in 2012, was because I was analyzing the precession of the equinoxes, the movement of the stars across the sky, the constellations across the sky. I noticed that they were speeding up. Based on my calculations, it was moving, instead of 27,000 years for one cycle, it was actually averaging around 25,000. I'm like, are the books wrong? Are these great astronomers wrong, or what's going on? And the more I dug into it, the more I looked into it, I realized the only thing that can explain this is if our sun is orbiting something. It would need breakaway speed, and it would, you know, it would speed up and it would slow down, speed up and slow down. So I started digging into that. I found out that they had something they were calling nemesis out there, something that they couldn't exactly say what it was, but they were saying there was a huge object out there orbiting our sun, and our sun was orbiting it. And they found it about 3 or 4 years ago. They labeled it Planet 9, but really is a brown dwarf star. They found a brown dwarf orbiting our sun. So we live in a binary solar system. We don't have one sun, we actually have two. One's a brown dwarf, which you can only see with 2-mass infrared mode on your telescope. You have to have a digital scope to see that because it's so dim, you can't see with the naked eye.
Is the sun black or white?
The sun is white. It's bright white, so it's not black actually. If you actually were able to go out and look at the sun above the atmosphere, you'll find out that it's actually bright white light. When it hits our atmosphere, it scatters, and when the light breaks down, we see more of the yellows because the blues are kept up there. So the sun actually is bright white.
Some say that the sun is black, but it's the charge of light that gives it the appearance of white.
Well, it's a nuclear explosion. Now, what's interesting about the sun is that a lot of the light doesn't even get to the surface for like 100, 200,000 years. So it could be both, a little bit of both. It could be that it is a dark sun, but the light is what we can see. For example, the sun is 8 light minutes away from Earth. So if the sun went dark right now, we'd have daylight for 8 minutes. Now the light—
And that's 90 million miles away.
90 million miles away, right. And the light that's formed on the inside from the collision of the atoms on the inside, the nuclei, when they're colliding and splitting, that light doesn't go straight from the center core right out to the outside of the sun. It actually meanders through the inside of the sun for thousands and thousands of years before it releases itself and leaves the corona. Then it takes 8 minutes to get to Earth. So the light that we're experiencing right now is hundreds of thousands of years old before it even got to us. You know what I'm saying? Before it left our sun.
So light is very interesting. You understand me? I want to talk about light and water for a second. Look like we might get to the whole elemental period by the time we're done with this conversation. So, I remember before I got on the journey of, teaching the financial literacy and liberation aspect, my deeper studies was into quantum physics and science and psychology and, a multitude of different things that I believe would help guide enlightenment. You understand me?
Yeah.
And so studying light, I started studying the 4th phase of water, right? Where in between, for those who don't know, water has 4 different phases. Some people say 5, but we're going to the 4. You understand me? Solid, liquid, gas. You understand me? And I used to think about that because I say the only difference between the water and each structure is the proton arrangement, not the proton count.
Right.
So it's not something new that's happening to the water that is entered into it that changes its state. It's the arrangement, you understand me, of its energy. And so when I thought about that, and then of course, light is energy. So we can say that it's light that changes, and then water has the most different states out of any other element. And so I liken that to consciousness, right?
Yeah.
That our consciousness can be in rigid states, it can be in flow states, right?
Yeah.
But what changes your consciousness going from a lower consciousness to a higher consciousness is enlightenment.
Yeah.
Right? When we read, right, I always say we re-add, right? We're re-adding knowledge that is already in us because we're not actually, nothing physical is going in there. Nothing is going to tinkering and changing with your brain. It's literally electricity changing the arrangement, you understand me, and the structure of your state of consciousness.
Yep.
And you can see a symbol, right, and gain enlightenment, right? Yeah. And it can cause an inner knowing that can have your mind, raising this vibration, right? And, that's not something that we often think about. And a lot of people gonna be like, oh, this conversation ain't gonna high level for real, right? But I say the 4th phase of water on purpose because, everything around us emits energy. Every single thing. We walk into a room, we say, damn, the vibe is off.
Right.
We don't realize we speaking in scientific terms.
Yeah.
You understand me?
Real science.
Yeah, it's true science. The vibe is off, but you have an intuitive connection on what that vibe is.
Yeah.
Right? That there's friction in the air, that the ions, you understand me, are positive or negative charge when you go into different environments.
Yeah.
And so if we understood that, then number one, we will create a more conscious sensitivity to the environments that we go to.
Yeah.
But we are in environments that are often very austere to, our embodiment, our aura, you understand me, and who we are. Because, for those who don't know, we emit an aura from our heart.
Yeah.
You understand me? And when that is pierced, that's when we start to get sick. And we are in environments we're not supposed to be in that are in friction to whatever our vibration is. That's when we feel off. Right? And there's only certain people, and I'm with Minister Louis Farrakhan said, somebody asked him once, they said, how are you able to go into all of these different type of environments? you understand me, and not be changed by them or not feel sick by them sometimes because you're around all these different type of people. And he said, I bring my own atmosphere.
That's right.